Je voudrais du soleil vert, des dentelles et des théières, des photos de bord de mer, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je voudrais de la lumière, comme en Nouvelle-Angleterre. Je veux changer d'atmosphère, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ma fleur, sous la pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, qu'il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Je voudrais du Fred Astaire, revoir un latte.
Following the breaking news, an unsubstantiated allegation by the Attorney General of the United States, William Barr, that has Democrats outraged tonight, with the House Speaker Nancy Pelosi saying that Barr, quote, is going off the rails. Let's dig deeper with our correspondents and our analysts. And Deanna, the Attorney General made a truly extraordinary claim today about spying on the Trump campaign in 2016. Listen to this exchange that he had during his congressional testimony.
I think spying on a political campaign is a big deal.
So you're not suggesting, though, that spying occurred?
I don't, I guess you could, I think spying did occur. Yes, I think spying did occur. I am not saying that improper surveillance occurred. I'm saying that I am concerned about it and looking into it. That's all.
Because he seemed to backtrack a little bit on that subsequent answer. What is he suggesting?
Well, look, he is saying what happened. What happened is that there was surveillance of people associated with the Trump campaign, which is how the whole notion of the investigation began. What he's also saying is the word spying, which is very, very loaded. It is technically accurate, which he said there when he was pressed on it by Senator Schatz of Hawaii, and he seemed to understand at that point, maybe he did before as well, that the term was incredibly loaded. But this is precisely the kind of rhetoric that the president and people around him have been saying from the rooftops to their base, that this is what's wrong, that this whole investigation was run amok and it shouldn't have happened from the get-go. But the fact is, what he really did say was, yes, there was surveillance, and I want to figure out if it was done properly.
Bill Barr is a classic demonstration of what's happened to the Republican Party. You know, he used to be an establishment figure, George Herbert Walker Bush administration, and now it's a Fox News party where they, and you saw this in his confirmation hearing, talking about Uranium One, all these fantasies about Hillary Clinton's wrongdoing. This is how he talks, because he's part of that party now, and that party thinks the FBI, the CIA, everybody's conspiring to get Donald Trump, and they now have their attorney general.
But it is true that there was technically spying on people around.
Carter Page was under investigation in a counterintelligence.
So what he said is not wrong. It's just the terminology he used was a dog whistle.
Was okay, fair enough. But I think the fact that we have the Attorney General,
actually, it was a bullhorn.
The Attorney General of the United States in a dog whistle to Sean Hannity is a big deal.
But I think part of the challenge, one thing to say there was spying. Another thing, if a FISA court authorized some surveillance because of credible evidence or suspicions.
And the federal government would have had to present evidence, or at least believe there was probable cause to obtain that FISA warrant against Carter Page. And I do think that when Attorney General William Barr, as Dan noted, under questioning from Brian Schatz, said, well, I'm talking about unauthorized surveillance, he did sort of understand the weight of the term spying, which frankly is a word that the president and his allies have used, and that's why the connotations were very problematic, certainly for Democrats on Capitol Hill, who said that they were flabbergasted and they did not believe that Barr, in his position, would not have known what the subtext to many people of the word spying might in fact be, particularly since he said he did not have evidence to suggest that the surveillance of Carter Page was in fact illicit.
Well, let's get Phil Mudd to weigh in on this.
Can you give me a chance to defend the spies for a moment?
You used to work at the CIA.
Yeah, that's right. I wasn't a spy. I was an investigator. Let's be clear here. And I think the language is what's significant. The difference between an investigation. If Barr had said investigations were aggressive during the campaign, including a court-authorized wiretap of Carter Page, people would have said, well, we knew that a long time ago. He used that word spying. I think what he's referring to, at least in part, is that Carter Page investigation that was underway. But by telling the American people we were spying, they start to think, well, we had James Bond inserted in the campaign.
But
I think that's the problem.
He's saying more than that. He's saying he's going to do an investigation of the investigation. Improper surveillance. So it's not just a factual observation of what went on. He is doing the bidding of Donald Trump, who has been saying from the very beginning that this was a witch hunt, this was improper, this was outrageous. So it's not just a factual observation. He is putting the Department of Justice to work to investigate the FBI and CIA.
And just to be clear, he's being encouraged to do that aggressively by Republicans in Congress who have been, not necessarily very aggressive on the notion of oversight in general, but on this particular idea of oversight, they're writing him letters, they're calling him, they're saying you have to figure out whether or not the genesis of this spying, counter-surveillance, whatever you want to call it, was done properly and was warranted.
And there's just a couple of issues that are important to point out about Carter Page. One is that this FISA warrant was obtained after he had already left the Trump campaign, and as mentioned, there would have been probable cause that they would have to present that he was acting as an agent of a foreign government, and they were relying on information provided to them by a confidential informant. And the other point that some people are making about the investigation is that this is, of course, a focus on the FISA warrant, which is where Republicans have fixated their attention, but it sort of overlooks that the broader investigation about Russian interference in the campaign was in fact triggered by the fact that George Papadopoulos bragged to the then Australian ambassador to the U.S. that the Russians had dirt on Hillary Clinton.
It is Friday, the 12th of April of 2019, and you are in West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. I am your chef de cuisine, Justice Putnam, and our daily special is Blue Moon Spirits Fridays, folks. Yes, it's a liquid diet today. Oh, no, we do have some true substance in which, the meat of the matter will still be present. But hey, we're going to wash our sorrows away, and we're going to be happy. That's right, because Blue Moon Spirits Fridays is the day that we honor the French 77, the perfectly balanced cocktail. In fact, it has been called the most perfectly balanced cocktail in the history of cocktailing. So do imbibe, just don't imbibe too much. They're pretty strong. And always have a helper. Really, it's better. Don't drink alone. That's no fun. We want to have fun. If you drink alone, hey, you fall into sorrow, and we don't want sorrow. Not on Friday. Well, hey, what's up with Bill Barr? I mean, if he's parroting Sean Hannity, why is Hannity parroting QAnon? Spying? Trump was spied on? There is an old adage, and not everyone's heard it. When the cops break the law, there is no law. And the top law enforcement official of the United States of America, essentially trampling upon the rule of law. A counter-espionage investigation was opened on Trump a long time ago. Yeah, not just because he's running for president this time. They have been looking at this guy since way back, I think, with Ivana. Why? Because Ivana's dad was part of the KGB. Give me an effing break. Why wouldn't they? They had to. Oh. And now they're going to investigate the investigators. And we're going to find out why they had this bias against Donald Trump. Well, you know, discovery is a wonderful thing, except when there is no rule of law. How is Mnuchin not in jail? For 5 years. It says right in the code. Obstruct this, delay it, obfuscate, you will go to jail for 5 years. Not you might, you will. And you don't get to hold your job either. He's not going to jail. The taxes have to be turned over to the committee chairman. It is the law. It's not might, it is shall. When the cops break the law, there is no law. Except for one thing. The resistance will continue to resist. And, the hippies are going to keep the great experiment going because we sort of like the idea of a representative democracy. What's on the rest of the menu today here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy? We're going to talk about how Trump's corruption is elevating being a grifter into an honorable profession. Wow. Jumped right over used car salesman. Grifter, well, I don't know. Maybe they're synonymous. You can't be one without the other? Maybe. Well, I don't know. A grifter can grift anything. You know, like a salesperson, it's just, they can sell anything. Devin Nunes said the quiet part out loud about his defamation lawsuit targeting journalists. Yeah, Devin Nunes with his yacht. We're going to speak a little bit about his yacht. And he sued the Fresno Bee. He sued fake, Devin Nunes parody accounts. Why? Because he has been exposed taking money, and he may have been part of a compromise operation with underage prostitutes. Now that's something to hold over someone's head and turn them into a neon toady for the whole goddamn world to see. And Stephen Miller advised Trump to weaponize ICE against Democrats, but the ICE legal department shut that whole thing down. That's right. ICE put a freeze on ICE and Donnie. I'll be here all week, all weekend too. After the break, we move to the chef's table where Trump says he doesn't know anything about Wikileaks. In fact, he heard Wikileaks could have been one of those coffee boys. Could have been. And as U.S. businesses grapple with trade delays, Customs and Border Protection will send about 100 agents to the Mexico border to speed up crossing times. Looks like going after microscopic brown people are putting a damper on getting goods back and forth so that we can grease the engines of the economy. Well, all that and more on West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Bon appetit. Bottom of our homepage at netrootsradio.com, you will notice the chat room link monitored by Kelly Lincoln. Hey, check out Kelly's shows on Saturday, the first being the 523 happy hour at the table with Kelly Lincoln. That's at 3 p.m. on the West Coast. Of course, 6 p.m. on the East Coast. And then later on, 3 hours to be exact, she meets up with Ricky May for the late night morning talk show. That's at 9 p.m. Pacific. Of course, that would be midnight on the East Coast. That's how it's the late night morning talk show. You can't get much more late night and early morning than that. So check out those shows. If you would then look to the leftish of our homepage, well, really at the bottom of our homepage at netrootsradio.com, you will then notice the contribute button. And all kidding aside, we are are we never in dire need? We're even in more dire need now because we need to purchase equipment that is rapidly decaying before our very eyes. You know, Netroots Radio has been continuously broadcasting for the last 8 years. That's 24/7, 365. And this powerhouse of resistance would not be able to do this unless we had your help. You know, what comes out of our wallets is it really helps, but we wouldn't be able to do it without you. And you are our biggest contributor. So thank you for your generosity, and do become a recurring Patreon of Netroots Radio. Really, just if you could afford a espresso latte type drink once a month, push those funds towards Netroots Radio, and Resistance Radio stretches those dollars really far. We've had a lot of experience, 8 years, in fact. Okay. If you would like to follow Netroots Radio on Twitter, you can do so at Netroots Radio, monitored by Tom. He takes care of that. Thank you, Tom. I take care of myself on @JusticePutnam. I post the show notes and links diary on Daily Codes about 10 minutes before showtime, and I do scramble to get those links on social media. Oh, yeah, that's a compressed little amount of time to get everything done. And if you would like to follow the show on Twitter, do so at Cookbook West. Pick up podcasts by way of Spreaker, Stitcher, TuneIn, iHeart, YouTube, iTunes, and wherever fine podcasts can be found. Ooh, okay, so let's take a look here. One of the problems that I have with some of these news sites and aggregates, sometimes the extra stuff that I have to keep on to keep the page open, like all the banner ads, sometimes I can't block those. They want you to whitelist or turn off your ad blocker. And when I do that on what I guess I'm going to have to consider a trusted site, some of that stuff can intrude. And we don't like that. I don't. Well, this first offering here of the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy is out of Raw Story by Noor Al-Sabai. The man Donald Trump hired to write The Art of the Deal noted that although the newly indicted Obama White House counsel Craig may have been from a previous administration, his grift, which included Paul Manafort, flourished under the current president. There's some people making hay that Craig is an Obama official. He was working with Manafort to disrupt, elections in other countries at the behest of Vlad. Trump ghostwriter Tony Schwartz remarked in a conversation with MSNBC's Ari Melber and fellow analyst Maya Wiley that Trump created a world where being a grifter is an acceptable, actually even an honorable profession these days. Is that Bill Barr's excuse? Is he thinking that he can finally cash in as if he hasn't after all these years? Well, I will say that a lot of these politicians do sell out for not very much money. I mean, almost like bottom feeder types. A few thousand. Oh, I got a few thousand from the tobacco industry. I have to, let everybody have cancer now because I got a few thousand. Yeah, what? All right. In a case stemming from Robert Mueller's investigation, Craig was charged with making false statements to the Department of Justice about whether Skadden Arps, his law firm, operated as foreign agents for the Ukrainian government. The case was an offshoot of Mueller's charges against Manafort, who worked extensively for former Ukrainian President Viktor Yanukovych. In 2012, Manafort helped Ukraine's government retain Qanon to write a report evaluating the prosecution of Yanukovych's political rival, Yulia Tymoshenko. And she just got out of jail not very long ago. Lock her up. Where did that come from? Could it have been about Tymoshenko? Well, she wasn't the first, but she was one of the most, shall we say, prominent, at least worldwide. Here in America, we don't even know or care what happens in the state next to us. Well, some of us don't care. Well, Craig was the lead partner in that project, getting Yulia Tymoshenko thrown in jail. Wow. The risk to the law when you have someone assaulting it from every side every day, I don't think it's ever been as high as it is, Schwartz said, referencing Trump. It's scary, Schwartz continued. This is what Trump does to people. He brings them down to his level. Well, crooks have a way of doing that. Grifters have a way of doing that. It's how they succeed in the shell game. And, I don't know, getting you to sign over the title to your domicile to them. Adam Peck of Share Blue Media brings us this next offering here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy Blue Moon Spirits Fridays, because we are all Nighthawks in the Diner of Life. Devin Nunes appeared on Fox News on Wednesday and admitted to frivolously using the legal system to attack and threaten journalists. Nunes filed a $150 million lawsuit against McClatchy, one of the country's largest newspaper chains, over a May 2018 article in the Fresno Bee. The story detailed a lawsuit filed by an employee of a Napa Valley winery where Nunes is a large investor. The employee alleged she was stranded aboard a yacht with a group of men who purchased this cruise as part of a charity auction and openly used cocaine and hired sex workers, some of whom appeared to be under the age of consent. And the winery settled with the employee in 2016. So it happened. Nunes, who has not disputed the details contained in the paper's reporting, sued the Fresno Bee this month, arguing that the paper defamed him by highlighting his investment in the embattled winery. Throughout 2018, McClatchy and its reporter, Mackenzie Mays, acting in concert with a Virginia political operative and her handlers, schemed to defame plaintiff and destroy his reputation, the lawsuit read. I would presume that any judge who knows anything about Devin Nunes says, this guy has no reputation to defame. You gotta have one first. He sold out a long time ago. Are you kidding me? Of course this is a frivolous lawsuit. But it's not about prevailing. What is it about? Legal experts on the left and right agree that Nunes' suit is without merit, and many have speculated its real purpose is to intimidate and threaten journalists. Well, speculation gave way to certainty when Nunes admitted that his suit is an attempt to expose the paper's sources. Oh, really? They want to know who the employee is so they can, I don't know, defame her? Tit for tat. It's all about revenge for these bottom feeders, isn't it? I am absolutely sure that they do not want this to get to discovery so that we find out who their sources are. Sounds like he's been talking with the Russians and maybe the Federalist Society, too, about how to do workarounds on the Constitution. Somebody gave them the phony information that the National Rifle Association was involved with Russian collusion. Somebody gave them the phony information that Cohen was in Prague when he wasn't. Well, nobody said Cohen was there. They said his phone was. Do you think we're idiots? Every crook thinks they're smarter than the cops. Every single one. Now, neither the NRA's collusion with Russia nor Cohen's whereabouts during the 2016 election are related to the suit that Nunes filed against McClatchy. But if Nunes was on a fishing expedition for sources, a 15-second Google search could have saved him quite a bit of hassle. The DOJ was the source that confirmed Maria Butina was instructed to jointly arrange introductions to U.S. persons having influence in American politics, including an organization promoting gun rights, for the purpose of advancing the agenda of the Russian Federation. That's from the Department of Justice. There's a source for you, Devin. And the origins of Cohen's alleged trip to Prague, a trip that Cohen himself has emphatically denied, stemmed from the so-called Steele dossier, the unverified Oppo research document compiled during the 2016 presidential election. I want to say it's not a dossier, it's a working paper, all right? It's raw. And it never said that Cohen was there. It said his phone pinged there. Somebody had his phone. Of course, journalists do rely heavily on well-placed sources, sometimes anonymous ones, to do their jobs effectively. Many states, including California, have robust shield laws designed to protect journalists from being forced to disclose their sources. But there is no federal shield law, and more than a dozen states have failed to pass their own. Perhaps that's why, despite living in California and suing a California newspaper owned by a California corporation, Nunes filed his suit in a state court in Virginia, which has no shield law. One of the effective strategies that the Nazis used was a robust manipulation of the legal and court systems. You know, history doesn't necessarily repeat, but it does resonate. Of Alternet brings us this final offering here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. The Washington Post revealed a scheme by Donald Trump's administration, and we're looking at you, Stephen Miller, you Santa Monica Goebbels, to target sanctuary cities and his Democratic opponents' constituents by weaponizing immigration and customs enforcement. The White House confirmed that it raised the idea of releasing detained immigrants into areas like San Francisco, where House Speaker Nancy Pelosi is from, in an attempt to retaliate against Trump's political adversaries. The White House told the Post that the idea has been dropped, but Pelosi's office was outraged. The extent of this administration's cynicism and cruelty cannot be overstated, spokeswoman Ashley Etienne told the Post. Using human beings, including little children, as pawns in their warped game to perpetuate fear and demonize immigrants is despicable. Of course it is. That's really what they market in, is despicability. There's a lot of money in despicability now, I've noticed. Well, the White House told U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement that the plan was intended to alleviate a shortage of jail space, but also served to send a message to Democrats. The attempt at political retribution raised alarm within ICE, with a top official responding that it was rife with budgetary and liability concerns and noting that there are PR risks as well. It's really funny when the PR risks outweigh committing a war crime. And the White House pressed again in February. ICE's legal department rejected the idea as inappropriate and rebuffed the administration. I expect that legal department to be purged. Indeed, they will. It's the slow-rolling night of the long knives. Hey, let's get to our break. And when we come back from that break, we're going to go through weather from around the world and finish up with the stories that we have curated for you today. You are listening to West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, and we will be right back.
You are listening to netrootsradio.com.
Please hang up and try again.
From a point at sea to the circles of your mind, a new force is at work for planetary transformation. New radio for a new Earth.
This is Take Two Movie Review. I'm Mike Friend. This week, unnecessary lessons. What 9/11 and 7/7 were for their respective cities, the Lashkar-e-Taiba attacks in 2008 were for the Indian city of Mumbai. And it is painfully, even brutally, now recounted in the new Hotel Mumbai, named for the main, but not only target of those terrorists. As with most pictures like this, the story is built around a few victimized characters, some of whom emerge as heroes. Here we have wealthy newlyweds, played by Armie Hammer and Nazanin Boniadi, their infant child and nanny, plus a nasty Russian mobster oligarch, Jason Isaacs, and a resourceful Taj waiter, brought off by who else but Dev Patel. The terrorist characters are developed to some extent as well. The line director Anthony Moras must walk here is to portray them accurately without over-humanizing them for the sake of the still very much traumatized victims. While this limits illumination, we do see their comfort level with cell phones and modern weaponry, side by side with their amazement at flush toilets. We hear their doubts, but can see their clearly long past thinking for themselves. And there's one unseen character, a cell phone voice only, providing tactical direction and quote-unquote moral encouragement. If a measure of a movie is realism, Hotel Mumbai succeeds. It does have the issue of character survival time as a function of the actor's star power, but without spoilers, not to the extent of some similar projects. The emotive reaction to the displayed horror in a movie like this is obvious, but after so many incidents presaging so many movies, the question is begged as to the presence of a more significant point. There really isn't much of one in Hotel Mumbai, but it's a quality ride, and you will tense in your seat rooting for the heroes. This has been Take Two Movie Review. I'm Mike Friend. Catch up with us at Take2MovieReview.com and feed us back on our page on YouTube.
This is Scientific American's 60-Second Science. I'm Jason Goldman. Coyotes are now common residents of many large urban areas. And while it doesn't happen all that often, coyotes are increasingly coming into conflict with people and with pets.
They're these mid-sized carnivores, which most people see them just as, large carnivores.
University of Washington Tacoma evolutionary biologist Christopher Schell.
Being in, say, like a city like Los Angeles or Chicago or New York is just mind-boggling and awe-inspiring. And in some instances, for a lot of people, because they don't know much about the animals, could be something that generates fear because of misunderstandings.
Schell wants to understand how coyotes come to feel so comfortable around people, so he can come up with strategies for preventing it. And he suspects it might have something to do with the parenting.
Our main goal was to see and test whether or not parents that have extended experience of people and human disturbance get habituated to the point where they actually transfer that habituation and that fearlessness to their offspring.
Schell and his team focused on 8 coyote families living at the U.S. Department of Agriculture's Predator Research Facility in Utah. Though captive, they live in large enclosures and lead mostly typical wild lives. Typically, the coyotes are fed in such a way as to minimize human contact. But for this experiment, the researchers did something different.
Instead of just walking away immediately, we fed them and then we just stared at them.
Turns out that when parents became more fearless around people, that is, they became perfectly happy to eat while people were watching them, their offspring became more fearless as well. And each litter of coyote pups was more fearless than the last. In fact, the most cautious pup from the second litter was bolder than the boldest pup from the first litter. That means that an entire family of coyotes can become completely habituated to humans in just 2 or 3 generations. And that's when they get into trouble.
Regardless of what type of behavioral phenotype an animal has, it seems like all of the animals, without any selective cost to being bold towards people, are finding out that being bold is an advantage in an urban area.
Which means those of us who live in coyote country need to work together to send a signal to coyotes that being bold is a disadvantage. And that starts with doing everything we can to ensure that our yards are as uninviting and unappetizing as possible.
Thanks for the minute. For Scientific American's 60-Second Science, I'm Jason Goldman.
This program is presented by the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention.
For an expectant mother, taking care of her developing baby means taking good care of herself. One way she can do this is by ensuring she gets vaccinated. If a woman is or might be pregnant during flu season, it's especially important to get her annual flu shot, preferably before the end of October. In addition, women should be vaccinated against whooping cough during the 3rd trimester of each pregnancy. Failure to get vaccinated places both mother and baby at increased risk for serious complications of these infections, including hospitalization and even death. If you're pregnant or planning to get pregnant, ask your healthcare provider when you should get your vaccines. Thank you for joining us on A Minute of Health with CDC.
For the most accurate health information, visit cdc.gov or call 1-800-CDC-INFO.
Hi, it's Tom. Could we humbly suggest your donation to netrootsradio.com? All we've got to run this 24-hour powerhouse of progressive resistance radio is what comes out of our own wallets. And you are our biggest donor. And it doesn't take much, $3, $5. Just go to the bottom of our netrootsradio.com page and hit our secure donate button. Heck, you can even make a recurring contribution. And you'll get a wondiferous pair of Netroots radio stickers for application to your backpack, your bumper sticker, or your banjo. Well, it's up to you which backpack you want to put it on. So donate what you'd like at the bottom of our netrootsradio.com's homepage. Because you are our biggest donor. Netrootsradio.com. Together, we are Resistance Radio.
Aren't poll taxes illegal, forbidden, unconstitutional? Well, we thought so.
My name is Ramsey Clark, and this is the Civil Liberties Minute with ACLU attorney Bill Newman.
The 24th Amendment to the United States Constitution, ratified in 1964, made poll taxes unconstitutional in federal elections. And a Supreme Court decision in 1966 ruled that poll taxes were unconstitutional in state elections as well, a violation of the equal protection guarantee of the 14th Amendment. So, between the Supreme Court's decision and the constitutional amendment, we all thought that the poll tax was dead. But now in Florida, it's returning. Last November, Florida voters approved a ballot measure to restore voting rights to 1.4 million persons with felony convictions who would serve their sentences. But now, Florida is on the verge of requiring persons who want to have their voting rights restored to have to pay any and all court costs and fines before they can get on the voter rolls. Really, you owe $25 in court costs, and the penalty is you can't vote in Florida. That's the proposal to discriminate against poor people and disproportionately people of color. A 2019 version of the poll tax.
The Civil Liberties Minute is made possible by the ACLU because freedom can't protect itself.
I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. There are some songs that stand at the core of the labor movement. Year after year, these songs ring out on picket lines, at labor rallies, and in union halls across the world. These songs inspire and build solidarity between workers. Undoubtedly, Which Side Are You On is one of those songs. On this day in labor history, the year was 1900. Today, we celebrate the birthday of Florence Reese, the author of Which Side Are You On's iconic labor lyrics. She was born in Tennessee, the daughter of a coal miner. During the 1930s, her husband Sam was an organizer for the United Mine Workers in Harlan County, Kentucky. In what came to be known as the Harlan County Wars, the battle for union recognition waged on for nearly a decade. Often, violent skirmishes broke out between striking miners and federal troops, and the mine owners hired guns. Legend has it that one fateful day in 1931, deputies were dispatched to kill Sam Reese. He escaped just in the nick of time. But Florence and her children were terrorized as the deputies illegally searched and ransacked their home. When the deputies left, an angry Florence ripped the calendar off the kitchen wall and on it wrote the lyrics to Which Side Are You On? Folk singer Pete Seeger heard the song, and in 1941 he recorded it with his group, the Almanac Singers. It entered into the lexicon of labor anthems. Then, in 1976, Florence appeared in the Oscar-winning documentary Harlan County, USA. The documentary told the story of a 1970s coal strike. In it, Florence sang her song, and the lyrics provided a powerful addition to the film. Since then, many more artists have covered versions of the song, including Annie DeFranco, Natalie Merchant, and this version by the Dropkick Murphys.
It's time for Nicole Sandler's What's News from NicoleSandler.com and the Progressive Voices Network.
Wikileaks founder Julian Assange was literally dragged from the Ecuadorian embassy in London on Thursday, reportedly at the behest of the U.S. government. He now faces up to 5 years in prison if brought back to the U.S. and found guilty on federal charges that he conspired to hack a computer to help release a trove of classified U.S. documents in 2010. NBC's Richard Engel has the story.
Bearded and pale, WikiLeaks co-founder Julian Assange was finally hauled out by British police from the Ecuadorian embassy in London. He'd been holed up inside for nearly 7 years. Assange carried a book cover out for the cameras, Gore Vidal on the Rise of the National Security State. The British Prime Minister interrupted Parliament to make the announcement.
This goes to show that in the United Kingdom, no one is above the law.
British police say they made the arrest on behalf of the U.S. after Ecuador revoked his asylum, citing Assange's discourteous and aggressive behavior. And hours later, U.S. authorities unsealing an indictment accusing Assange of conspiring with former U.S. soldier Chelsea Manning to hack into a Pentagon computer. Assange's WikiLeaks first grabbed headlines 9 years ago, publishing troves of classified files critical of the U.S. war in Iraq and internal State Department cables. When WikiLeaks published hacked emails embarrassing the Democratic Party during the 2016 campaign, President Trump was a fan.
This just came out. WikiLeaks! I love WikiLeaks!
At the time, I asked Assange how he got those stolen emails.
So are you saying that the emails that you released were not hacked by Russia?
We obviously, as a source protection organization, we don't disclose our sources.
And today, after the charges were announced, no more praise from the president.
I know nothing about WikiLeaks. It's not my thing. I've been seeing what's happened with Assange, and that will be a determination, I would imagine, mostly by the Attorney General.
The Ecuadorians had grown tired of keeping Assange here, complaining about his behavior and hygiene. Tonight, his attorney says his work should be protected by freedom of the press.
The Trump administration wanted to release immigrants detained at the U.S.-Mexico border into so-called sanctuary cities to retaliate against Democrats who oppose the president's border wall plans. Washington Post reporter Rachel Bate explains.
We found out that Stephen Miller, who's one of the top White House hardliners on immigration, very close to the president, they leaned on ICE to consider this proposal where they would be moving undocumented immigrants they had captured at the border to sanctuary cities or the districts of adversaries like Democrats. And the one that was mentioned in particular was Nancy Pelosi.
So they were actually suggesting putting people who had just been arrested from the southern border and driving them to San Francisco, to Nancy Pelosi's district, to drop them off?
That's exactly right, busing them. There were two sort of ideas that we heard from folks familiar with these plans. One of them was to take people right from the border who were trying to cross and move them to sanctuary cities, including San Francisco, where Pelosi obviously is that's her district as speaker. The other idea was to move people who are already in detention in ICE to these districts. So there's sort of two different plans considered.
Former FBI Director James Comey said Thursday that he has, quote, no idea what the heck Attorney General William Barr was talking about when he alleged that there was spying on the Trump campaign in 2016. Speaking at the Hewlett Foundation's Verify conference, Comey reportedly added that, quote, the only thing I can say generally is that I think his career has earned him a presumption that he will be one of the rare Trump cabinet members who will stand up for truth and facts. Language like this makes it harder, but I still think he's entitled to that presumption, end quote. His comments came just a day after Barr told the Senate Appropriations Committee that I think spying did occur. In a frightening trend, Ohio's so-called heartbeat bill is now law. Republican Governor Mike DeWine signed the controversial bill into law Thursday. It bans abortions after a fetal heartbeat is detected, which could come as early as 6 weeks into pregnancy. That's before many women even know they're pregnant. Opponents of the law promised a court challenge, and that's fine with many of the law's proponents who hope it ends up at the Supreme Court. Other states have passed heartbeat bills that were later declared unconstitutional. Meanwhile, Mississippi's Republican governor signed a similar bill in March, and Georgia passed its own version, which the state's Republican governor is expected to sign. Swamp alert! Former oil industry lobbyist David Bernhardt has been confirmed as the 53rd Secretary of the Interior. The Senate voted 56-41, mostly along party lines, but with the usual suspects, Joe Manchin and Kyrsten Sinema, plus Heinrich of New Mexico and independent Angus King of Maine, voting with Republicans to confirm the Colorado native and former oil and gas lobbyist who had served as the Interior Department's acting chief since Secretary Ryan Zinke stepped down in January amid mounting ethics scandals. And that's just a bit of what's news for now. I'm Nicole Sandler. If you appreciate these reports and the Nicole Sandler Show, I hope you'll consider making a contribution. My work is 100% listener funded, and I can't do it without your help. Find out more at NicoleSandler.com/donate.
Thank you for accompanying us here to the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, Blue Moon Spirits Fridays. We are all Nighthawks in the Diner of Life, of course. We always begin, whether from around the world, along the banks of the Rogue River, in the Rogue River Valley of Southern Oregon on the west coast of the continental United States of America, where it is currently 48 degrees Fahrenheit. We are expecting a high, yes, indeed. We are expecting a high in the low to mid 60s, overnight lows in the low to mid 40s, and then looks like we're going to get a high into the upper 60s, low 70s on Saturday. Overnight lows in the mid to upper 40s. Spring has sprung, as they like to say around God's country. Okay, we are currently in cloudy conditions and will remain so throughout the day. Winds are light and variable out of the east proper and will remain so, looks like all day and all night. And then they will shift tomorrow out of the southwest and increase at 5 to 10 miles per hour, bringing small chances of rain. We have small chances of rain throughout today and tonight. And when I say small chances, usually what that means, and it's happening right now, is it will get a drizzle, and then it'll stop, and then it'll be misty, almost like a drizzle, and then it'll dry up just a little, and then it'll drizzle. Okay, there's a lot of drizzles and littles in that soliloquy, isn't it? Pollen is rated at none. Air quality index is in the green good condition at 21 parts per million. Daytime UV index has gone down to 4, but is in still the cautionary moderate range. Barometric pressure is falling at 29.88 inches. Visibility is at 7 miles. And relative humidity is at 99%. No wonder it feels wet. Weather from around the world is brought to you by people's personal weather stations that they purchased. These people planted these purchased personal weather stations somewhere on their property, and these people positively live around the world. London is 50 and mostly cloudy. Paris is 52 and partly cloudy. Rome is 59 and partly cloudy. Kiev is 55 and merely cloudy. Kabul is 60 degrees with showers in the vicinity. If there's showers in the vicinity, it usually keeps the drones away. You would hope. Hong Kong is 69 and cloudy. Japan, I think that would be Tokyo, is 47 and fair. Sydney, Australia is 62 degrees and clear. San Francisco, California is 49 degrees and fair. And New York is 49 degrees Fahrenheit and cloudy. And that is weather from around the world, brought to you by people's personal weather stations that they purchased. These people planted these purchased personal weather stations somewhere on their property, and these people positively live around the world. Anonymous worker bees at Reuters bring us this first amuse-bouche here at the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Donald Trump said he did not have an opinion about the arrest of Wikileaks founder Julian Assange, who faces the prospect of extradition to the U.S. over the publishing of secret official information. No, it's for breaking in and stealing it. It's a big difference. Please, I'm sorry, Reuters, get your story straight. British police arrested Assange on Thursday after Ecuador withdrew its asylum that had allowed him to take refuge in the country's embassy in London for 7 years. I know nothing about WikiLeaks. It's not my thing. I really don't have an opinion. Oh, my God. The gaslighting continues, but you know what? Not everybody in America is as stupid as your deplorable base. Boy, I'm telling you. On the campaign trail during the 2016 presidential election, Trump repeatedly praised WikiLeaks. Trump said, "I love WikiLeaks," after released a cache of hacked Democratic Party emails that harmed the candidacy of his opponent, one which named Hillary Clinton. U.S. prosecutors have charged Assange with conspiring with former Army intelligence analyst Chelsea Manning to access a government computer. Yes, it's not for the release, it's for the breaking and entering and the stealing of it. Manning was convicted by court-martial in 2013 of espionage and other crimes for providing more than 700,000 documents, videos, diplomatic cables, and battlefield accounts to WikiLeaks, though the final 28 years of her sentence were later commuted by President Barack Obama, because normally what people would get sentenced to is like 5 to 7. Okay, let's be clear. And Reality Winner's still in jail, serving a 5 to 7 year sentence for letting the United States know that, yes, every state was hacked by Russia. She's in jail. Julian Assange is not.
Je te donne ce mon amour pour la vie entière. La promesse de me trouver à tes genoux. Aussitôt que tu m'appelles, rester toujours fidèle. C'est tout, c'est tout. Je te donne tous mes printemps, mes étés de mer, mes automnes quand les feuilles tombent partout. Si ce n'est pas une bonne affaire, je te donne tous mes hivers, c'est tout.
Julio Cesar Chavez, I don't think it's that one, it's the other one, brings us this final amuse-bouche here at the Chef's Table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. U.S. Customs and Border Protection will send about 100 agents to the Mexico border to speed up crossing times, a U.S. Congresswoman said, as businesses grapple with trade delays after officers were deployed to be Gestapo and round up a bunch of brown people and terrorize them because they were trying to flee from persecution, death, rape, and I don't know, just regular wartime pillaging. The slowdowns began late last month after Trump threatened to close the border if Mexico did not halt a surge of people seeking asylum in the United States, which is their legal right to do. Trump wants to violate international law. There will be a cell at The Hague waiting for him after he serves his time here first. The administration moved several hundred border agents to handle the influx of migrants, triggering long delays for cross-border traffic because of the staffing shortage. I guess this is the time to get your human sex trafficking through. All the drugs, like all the fentanyl and all the opiate, all the heroin, everything. Just make the base stuff, bring it over. You don't even need to put it in the middle of the load on a pallet. Just carry it right there in the seat. They don't have enough people to check. Wow. As soon as Monday, Border Protection plans to send officers from the Canadian border and other parts of the country to El Paso, Texas, said U.S. Democratic U.S. Representative Veronica Escobar of Texas, noting she had been informed by CBP Deputy Commissioner Robert Perez. Well, I guess that guy's going to be fired right quick. Border Protection did not immediately respond to a request for comment because if they do, they're going to find out who that person is and fire their ass too. It's a purge. It's the slow-rolling night of the long knives. The Rio Grande Valley on the eastern edge of the border was being considered as another point to deploy extra officers, Escobar added. Wait times totaling hours have hit industrial trade hard. Losses have amounted to almost $1 million a day for transportation businesses in Mexico's Ciudad Juarez across the border from El Paso. And data from Border Business Association Index Juarez show that losses from 28 export firms that utilize the crossing have totaled over $15 million the past week. In El Paso, several truckers said they usually did 4 crossings a day and were now managing only 1. Some manufacturing plants, including automotive factories that depend on constant cross-border shipments, have turned to expensive air freight to stay on schedule. And passenger vehicles that would normally wait up to an hour and a half to cross are now facing 4-hour waits. Exactly how that Santa Monica Goebbels Stephen Miller envisioned it. And now Trump is putting it into reality. Well, that brings us to the end of our broadcast period for the day and the week. But you know Netroots Radio is going to broadcast on. We'll meet up on Monday for River City Hash Mondays because we always do. So stay tuned all day and all night and all weekend for all the breaking news as it breaks. and we'll meet up here on Monday, right here in West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Bon appetit.
Je voudrais du soleil vert, des dentelles et des théières, des photos de bord de mer, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je voudrais de la lumière, comme en Nouvelle-Angleterre. Je veux changer d'atmosphère, dans mon jardin d'hiver. À fleurs, sous la pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, qu'il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Je voudrais du Fred Astaire, revoir un latte Goël. Je voudrais toujours te plaire dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je veux déjeuner par terre, comme au long de golfe clair, t'embrasser les yeux ouverts dans mon jardin d'hiver. Pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Ba-da-da-dum-di-da-dum. 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 Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ba-da-da-dum-di-da-dum. 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 Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Dans mon jardin d'hiver.